Hey guys, James Grage here. So I just finished doing a set of dumbbell preacher curls. Now most people have seen this exercise done and many of you know what it's for, but do you know why and how it works? Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about this exercise along with a few others and why you definitely want to incorporate them into your arm training to get bigger and thicker biceps. Now, last week's video, we talked about how to build that peak on your biceps by targeting the long head or the outer head of the biceps. So today we're going to talk about how to get more width or thickness in the biceps by targeting the inner or the short head of the biceps. Now, as I mentioned in last week's video, the biceps has two different heads, the outer head and the short inner head. Now at the bottom, both heads join together where they insert primarily into the radius here, right here on your forearm. But up top, they split apart and originate from two different locations. Now this is very important because the different tendon attachments is what allows us to target one area over the other. Now in the first video in this series on length-tension relationship, we talk about putting a muscle in either a biomechanical advantage or disadvantage based on either shortening or lengthening a muscle. So in the last video, I talked about bringing the arm behind the body in order to target the outer head of the biceps. So in order to target the inner head and build more width in the biceps, we're going to do the opposite and we're going to bring our arm out in front of our body like we would in a preacher curl. So to better show you what I'm talking about, let me grab my buddy Bones here. All right, I'm going to turn him sideways. I'm going to use this piece of elastic here to simulate the muscle. So the long head or the outer head of the biceps sits right here in the bicipital groove and attaches down here on the forearm. So this is a neutral position for the muscle. Last week we talked about bringing the arm behind the body to put tension on that muscle and to target the long head of the biceps. So what we want to do is we want to do the opposite, and we're going to bring the arm in front of us here. And what this is doing is putting that muscle in a more relaxed position or a biomechanical disadvantage. And this is the first step in allowing us to target the inner head of the bicep by putting the outer head in a more relaxed position, basically taking it out of the equation. All right, Bones, thanks, buddy. Hang tight. I'll need your help again shortly. So step one is putting that long head of the biceps in a more relaxed position in order to target the inner head. And the next step is we have to try to create the ideal length and tension on the inner head. So how do we do that? Well, first we need to look at the muscle insertion and origin in order to see what position we need to be in to create a slight stretch in order to target that area. So let's grab Bones again and I'll show you. We'll take a closer look here. All right, so the short head of the biceps, we already know now that in order to take the long head or the outer head of the biceps out of the equation, we have to put our arm in front of us. That puts that long head in a more relaxed position. So how do we create more tension? In other words, how do we stretch the short head just slightly? Well, looking at where it inserts, you can see it inserts closer towards the midline of the body than the long head. The long head is inserting out here. So the short head inserts here. So to create length or to stretch it slightly, we need to move away from the midline of the body. In other words, move the arm out away from the body. So if I turn Bones here, kind of a 3/4 angle, we know we need to come out in front, and then that's going to put the long head in a relaxed position, and then to create tension for the short head and target the inner part of the biceps, we're going to move our arm out away from our body slightly. Bones, thanks, buddy. Now this creates a more optimal length and tension on the muscle for the strongest possible contraction, which means the muscle is going to work harder, which in turn means more targeted muscle growth. Okay, so all that's me just being a geek and getting into all the details of anatomy and biomechanics, but now let's just talk about how to apply that here in the gym and building muscle. So going back to the preacher curl, besides putting our arm in the correct position, our hand position is also important. To maximize the contraction in the biceps, you want to supinate your hands, meaning you want to rotate your palms upward, getting your pinky as high as possible. Now, most people like to do preacher curls like this with an easy curl bar. Now, the biggest problem with this is in my hand position. As you can see, my hand is only partially supinated. Now, this is okay if I'm also trying to target other arm flexors like the brachialis and the brachioradialis, which we'll talk about in a future video. But to target the biceps, we want to supinate the hands more. Now, most people like using an easy curl bar like this because you feel stronger due to the other sister muscles that are recruited using a neutral grip like this. But building muscle isn't always about lifting heavier, it's about targeting muscle growth with the right technique. So to target the inner head as much as possible, I like to use dumbbells when doing preacher curls. Now with a dumbbell, I can fully supinate my hand at the top for maximum contraction. So see how I turn it at the top and bring that pinky up. Now the other advantage is that I'm more easily able to move my arm position out wide to create that slight stretch on the inner head of the biceps like we talked about earlier. So what other exercises can we do to target this inner head? Well, the same can be done with a spider curl or even a bent over concentration curl. Now as you can see, both of these exercises put the arm out in front of your body. Now you don't have to use just dumbbells. If you want to use a bar, I prefer a straight bar with a nice wide grip. In last week's video, I talked about range of motion. Now instead of stretching all the way at the bottom, which is also allowing the muscle to rest, I stopped just short of that, which not only keeps constant tension on the muscle, but by stopping short, it's forcing you to use your muscles as a brake to stop the weight instead of your tendons in the joint. Now this gives you a great eccentric or negative contraction, which has been shown in studies to create more fiber damage and therefore more growth than a concentric contraction. Not to mention it's also easier on your joints and tendons. Now we'll go into more detail on negatives or eccentric contractions as well as muscle time under tension in future videos, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of those future videos. Now, if you like this content, then please give it a thumbs up. That feedback helps keep me encouraged to keep putting up videos for you guys. And if you have any questions, please leave them down below in the comments. I'm here to help you, but I can't if I don't know what questions you have. So please help me help you by commenting below.